Hi everyone, this is Kyle Marshall, aka Againstime from grinderschool.com. Today I'll be playing Sit and Goes on the Ultimate Poker Network. For those of you unfamiliar with that, it is one of the two cash game sites and real money play sites in Nevada right now. It is a site I have a lot of confidence in. Every time I've cashed out, my money was delivered quickly. The software could use some improvement, but the site overall is very good. I have a lot of faith in it. WSOP.com is equally viable. It has a little better cash game traffic, a little less sit and go traffic. This here with the ace-5 suited, this is a standard raise from the hijack in this blind level. We got more callers than we would typically get here, and with no spades and no hand, we should just be checking this. Should never be c-betting in this situation against so many opponents and really not having any way to show down. This is kind of an odd spot with the king queen. The hand plays well post flop. The problem is when you make it 2 1/4, which is my standard raise, and a fairly small raise, you really don't have much room to maneuver on the flop or afterwards, and so it's best to go ahead and win the hand outright here with a shove. It can be shoved in that position for I think 12 blinds, maybe even 13. Standard raise here with the ace king. However, at 13 or 14 blinds, I would have just made a small raise, and I'd be very comfortable playing the hand post flop. 12 blinds is what I consider to be the narrowest stack size where you can really raise a hand without shoving it and then still maneuver a little bit, but it's very awkward, and I generally try to avoid it. At 13 blinds or more, I will prefer a raise over a shove. Here we're calling based on odds. You should be calling any two instantly there. There's really nothing to think about. Anytime you're getting better than 2-1 odds and a call would close the action, and a loss wouldn't severely cripple your stack, you should be calling there. We're just going to make a standard c-bet here with the ace-king. I made it about 60% of the pot, pretty standard. Later blind levels, my c-bet size tends to gravitate towards 30 to 50%. Earlier on, it's more like 50 to 75%. Later players are more aware that they're risking their stack in any particular hand, and so it's less necessary to spend chips to get the same effect, and so I tend not to. This is shove or fold, small blind, 10 blinds or less, regardless of your hand, you should be playing shove fold. I think you'll be getting plenty of action here from marginal hands, no reason to get cute with it and possibly lose a bigger pot. There are very few hands I would make a small raise with in this position. Even though I said I'd be happy to raise with 13 blinds, that's only true when you're not on the bubble. Once you get into short-handed play like this, you really want to just make a shove or fold to avoid that awkwardness at 13 blinds for the most part, especially in the situation where you have the small stack next to you and the big stack and the big blind like we had. There would have been a very narrow range of hands that I would have made just an open raise there with. Anytime you make a raise like that as well, you should assume that you're committing yourself against any stacks of less than 10 blinds that you're raising through, provided there's no extreme action. You should be willing to call just based on odds. Here we'll be hoping to get involved. If the player on the button makes a small raise, I'll probably re-steal all in. This is a fairly steep raise. I haven't seen a ton of 4x raises. We're just going to let it go as the medium stack here. 3x raise would have been happy to shove over. This is a more committing raise. We're more likely to get call. Against a player who we notice just making that their standard, though, we'd be happy to shove queen 10 suited all the same. Here we'll be happy to get involved with the fives. Here I'm actually still going to shove. This raise looks like to me that he wants to isolate the player in the big blind, and he doesn't maybe particularly want me to get involved. And I think that I have significantly more fold equity over that raise than I did over the previous one. Even though I was probably equally happy with my hand, to be honest, fives and queen 10 suited I consider pretty close as far as re-steal value is concerned. Here we're going to ISO raise it. 275 is fine. My standard here might be like 300. 150 plus 3 limpers, 300 is pretty standard. That said, we have queens, and no one at this table really knows me and knows what my standard raise is, and so we can make it a little smaller and maybe get some more action here. Standard raise here, 450. We won't be letting this go. We're just trying to extract maximum value. I'm going to bet 550 on the flop, and I'm planning on shoving the turn pretty much no matter what. We really can't ever fold in this situation like this. When so many chips are on the pot and we have a top pair over pair hand like this, you're pretty much always committed. Just to talk about some of the players, if there are any that I can really comment on, I actually don't recognize anyone. I guess that's to be expected. I usually play a little higher stakes than this, but some players who play the $8 games will also play, 20 and up. So um, this player right here is shit for brains. I remember thinking that was funny. I know I've played with this player before, but it was no one to be feared or anything. It was just a random player that I thought had a funny name, but I don't notice any regs or anything. I would have wanted to get involved with this king queen, but not after a raise and a shove. Here we just shove the jacks over the raise. Standard re-steal here. We can make a raise with this ace 3 as well. We're vying for the chip lead right now. Don't really want to have to call either of these shoves, but it's worth it to try to steal here from the cutoff for sure with any ace, especially since this player doesn't seem to be playing back at as much. Here, I don't necessarily think I'm ahead, but I'm committed to call this with any 2. And we have a fairly good situation where we're ahead. This one worked out for us, it looks like. I think this player had ace queen or something like that. Alright, so we are running fairly good so far. Gotten it in good. Okay, we were in the money on the top left game. Still be looking to play this aggressively though. I probably am at my most aggressive on the bubble, but I stay a lot more aggressive than I ever was in the early levels once I hit the bubble through three-handed play and even the heads up. A lot of players like to get cute in a small blind with hands like this. I think it's a way to lose a lot of chips in the long run. I will just let those go, and I tend to steal more in spots that I think are more favorable. If you get called there, the hand never plays well post flop, and this I don't particularly love, but I think we have to call here with tens. Yeah, that's a flip. Anyway, as I was saying here in the small blind, if we make a raise and we get flat called, the hand plays poorly post flop, and a c-bet puts us in a really awkward spot. If they re-steal, we can never call. So there's really not a good situation unless they just fold. I think it's better to get rid of marginal hands in the small blind in those situations, especially when you're at stack sizes that promote your opponent coming over the top. This king 8, we definitely don't want to just fold this. I'm going to limp. You could limp or make a small raise here. I think shoving is too deep. We're like 14 blinds deep. And I'm just going to lead out here. It has nothing to do with what my hand is. I would lead out here absolutely every single time on this flop in this situation. I would have done it whether I had a hand or not. Better to go ahead and bet here. There's a lot of draws your opponent could have or they would hang on. We'll make a small raise with the king 10. If this player had just maybe 1 or 2 fewer blinds, we would just shove this, and we'll call this player shove it should they do so, not because I necessarily think I'm ahead, but because they have 10 blinds and I feel that I'm committed, or even just 9 blinds. Excuse me. Load up. This is an easy shove here with the ace 5. We'd be looking to get all in here with any pair, any ace, any king high really. Very loose. This is 8 blinds deep with the jack high. This is a shove. It's marginal. It's not a highly profitable shove, but it's probably about break even. And with this player being the medium stack, we'll go ahead and lean on him. Here we're just like looking to let this 3-4 go. We're just gonna shove this less than 10 blinds through both players standard shove. Jack 3 suited. We're at 11 blinds. You can't really raise fold, and a raise puts us in a bad spot. I think it's not quite good enough to shove. You might need like Jack, I don't know, Jack 5, Jack 6 suited, something. We'll just let that go and find a better spot. We'll go ahead and looks like we have another game here. This is just a $5 sit and go. I'm just gonna minimize this for now, and I'll bring it up as we finish one of these games. Easy shove with the king jack suited. Fold the deuce 10. Fold the 9-4. Here we're just gonna shove it. You could raise or shove it. This problem with making this small raise is if another player shoves, you really need to be folding most of the time. A7 doesn't. A7 offsuit does not show down well against players who don't re-steal wide. We're just going to shove this 2 to preserve the same kind of action. Whatever I did on the previous hand, I would have done the same here with the strong hand ace queen. And so since we shoved before, we'll shove again. This is a really terrible call. I don't know why this player would do this. They're obviously just here to have fun. We'll shove over this limp with the queen jack. And we'll shove. This is a deep shove. I don't know this player though, and I think you have to get involved here. They're only in the hijack. They could easily have a hand that flips with this here, but I don't think folding's the right move. Pretty much ever there. There are a couple players that I might fold to in this situation, but this isn't one of them. There are regs here I would call with this king 4, but I don't know this player. Ace king here. This is a tough spot. This is a $5 game, so it's kind of hard to say whether ace king is going to be good here. I recommend you lay it down. I don't think calling would be bad. I just think with 15 chips involved in the pot, not really knowing the player, it's not really worth it. I don't think it would have been bad to call. As you can see, he had ace king. When I see that from a player, unless they've been doing it before, my general range to put them on is something like 10s plus ace queen suited plus ace king. I find it's usually a pretty tight range when it's one of the first few hands in the tournament. And so against 10s ace queen suited ace king, you probably really want to have more like I would say ace king suited queens are better would be a good calling range if you don't know the player. Now once they start doing that and playing more aggressively, you can call just as light as I said. 10s ace queen suited ace king would all be perfectly fine. We'll let this king 5 go until he shows quite how loose he's shoving. We'll limp here with the 5-6 suited. Would have raised it on the button or even in an earlier position had it been folded to us. Easy shove with the queen 7. We're just playing the Nash shove fold at this stack depth and heads up. Good call with the jack 10. See if we can get another game loaded up here. Okay, we have one more in the background loading up. Alright, with the 5-6 we'll just fold it. Fold the 3-5. Queen 9 we can call for pot odds. Check here. All in on the ace king. This is a standard re-steal. 20 blinds or less. I don't do a lot of flat calls here, and out of position I would just recommend shoving or folding. It's like our pot odds based call worked out for us. Should have been calling here. I think we had 3 blinds effectively to call. That's about right. It should be 3,600. So you should have called here pretty much with anything. 5-4, same principle. We'll shove it 3 blinds deep. Shove about anything. Should be calling anything as well. We'll just c-bet this as if we would, whether we hit it or not. We'll shove these aces, same play we just made, so it'll make it more suspect and more likely to be called. Shove the 5s over the limp, and we won't be cute with this 10-9. We'll just get it in right here with what is most likely the best hand. It was the best hand, at the time at least. Same thing here with the 5s. We made a good play, it just didn't work out for us. Can't always work out. We've run pretty well so far. Can't really be disappointed in any of this. Looks like we won this one. That means we can go ahead and shuffle in this other game now. 6-8, we'll just check. Jack 7, shove into the 2 players on the bubble. Fold the Queen 8. Looks like we finished third in this one. Here at the King 6, against a pro I would just shove this. Against someone I don't know so well, I like to try to make more steal opportunities these stacked ups, because these players will flat call you or just fold more often, and so there's more opportunity to steal. It won't always work out to your advantage, but in general it is a better approach against non-regs. If he shows a tendency to float me a lot or re-steal a lot, then I'll begin to approach the game as I would against a professional player. And that would be open shoving more frequently, making fewer steal raises. We'll just let this go. Could potentially have the best hand here, but I think at about 12 blinds we should be looking to shove or fold. Got it in good here, didn't work out for us, but this is a fine call considering our shoving range. And we'll just shove over this limp as we would with any hand that we'd play here. Standard raise in this blind level for me is 75, so we do that from the hijack with 10-8 suited. Probably wouldn't raise this from any earlier positions in this blind level. Shove the ace deuce. This player open or re-steals all in for almost 1,500 chips over a small raise. We really want to see what he would have here to do this. This is a terrible play, and this is a terrible call, obviously. We'll shove over this limp again. We'll keep in mind that these players are both just kind of joking around. Neither one are someone to worry about. We'll be calling them super light should we get the opportunity. Get a flip here. You can see he's trapping us with King 10. A lot of players will start to do that when you shove over their limps. It's absolutely the wrong way to play it. It's better to just shove all the hands that you're willing to play, because then you have that fold equity and you don't just have to win at showdown. And that fold equity adds up a lot in the long term. And players who try to limp trap make a lot less money in the long run than players who just raise and then either call the re-steal or re-steal themselves against raises. So not the best way to play it. It does work out sometimes, but in the long run you'll want to play heads up from a raise fold perspective at 20 blinds or less. It's like we cashed in, I guess, all of these games so far, so we've been running pretty well. Easy shove with the 4s. This is fine. Against my shoving range, King 6 is a good call here. Nothing wrong with this at all. I probably would call myself. So no hard feelings about that. Looks like we have another game or two about to load up here. And we're still in position to potentially win this game. We'll fold that. I'm capable certainly of raising anything on the button here, and often I will, but right after I lose a big pot, I think raising any 2 is a little overly aggressive. I think players are more likely to come back at you, and I think it's a good time to fold the worst junk in your range. Looks like we got another game loaded here. Get another one queued behind it. And I probably will not load up any more games. I think we'll have plenty here. May even have more than we really want, so we'll see what happens. Now, this player should be, if they're playing it correctly, should be folding or shoving just about anything here. Don't think they probably are. We would be calling really wide though, even against an unknown. It's okay to really raise, limp, or fold this, depending on your style. I'm going to fold it. I think any play would be viable, though. We will raise this even to the short stack, and if he shoves, we'll be happy to call. Committed here. This is kind of unusual. I'm just gonna fold it. I think as far as set odds go, you need a little better than 10 to 1. We are getting 10 to 1. We're not getting better than 10 to 1. I think this player's range is tight. I think it's something like nines, ace jack suited, ace queen. I think they typically would have a pretty strong hand here. I think we're about even with that range, and so I don't think it's to our advantage to really get involved early on. Once we see this kind of action, though, I think it was extremely unlikely that our tens were good, and I'm happy I folded them. Looks like we made a good read there. And you don't always know that you're behind with tens there. Some players you would call, but I just had a feeling that I didn't have the best hand, and that was the case. This is a good shove here for 10 blinds on the button. You would shove even jack 8 offsuit, or like a jack 4 suited, maybe even jack deuce suited against tight players. Nothing we can do about running into queens here. Standard shove just doesn't always work out. Here from the hijack, you can raise or fold this. You could even limp it, but I prefer raising or folding from the hijack. I don't like to limp if no one else has limped before me. We're just going to check. This is a very coordinated flop, which our hand still has some kind of showdown potential, and I think it's best to check behind. Make it 120 here. Would bet 120 here even if we hit the second 8 or not. We'll just check the ace 9. Would have bet many turn cards there. It just happened to run into another 8. Into 5, you can raise ace 10 at this blind level. Probably wouldn't raise it into more people than this, though, or this early on. Looks like we finished third in this game. So far, cashes on every table. That's an excellent result that, as we all know, doesn't always happen. Here we completely brick this and have quite a few callers. It's not necessarily c-betting out of the question. If both players had checked to me, I would say I would c-bet this flop about 40% of the time. We do have a lot of potential of running into a better hand with the runner heart draw or the 2 overs, but I think in general it would be best to check there and take a free card. Obviously, we weren't calling a large bet. Just let this go. Remember, early on, we're always trying to project a relatively tight image, and we'll be taking advantage of that later when the chips are of greater value to steal. Should have other games loading up here shortly. We'd be happy to steal this. I would say even into 5 players in this blind level would be okay. Probably not more than that. Into 4 players should be automatic. We would have either limped or made an ISO raise ourselves if this player did not do so. In this position, I'd be more likely to have ISO raised it, and I would have made it 200, and I would have c-bet most flops for just over half pot. Obviously would have been happy to c-bet this, and even would have committed my stack here with the 2 overs and the flush draw after my c-bet. We'll raise here. Easy raise. This is a situation where a bet can lead to a shove, and that shove we would not have odds to call. Even though I really like my hand here, I think that c-betting there is less advantageous than checking. Here we'll go ahead and make a stab, and there are a lot of river cards that we can go ahead and bet for value. Could potentially bet that on a flop as well. Just how the stack sizes lined up, I felt that a lot of times if they'd hit their hand, it would provoke a shove, which makes us fold, and I really didn't want to be put in that spot. Another easy steal spot here with the 10-9 of diamonds. Would probably raise this into the whole table, being 6-handed. Let the ace-6 go. We have a short stack here and another one here we don't want to be raising through. This is about as ideal a board to c-bet as you could ask for, and we have the draw here as well. We'll make it 160. It looks like we get a fold. This wouldn't be an awful steal, but we've raised the last few hands. Just let it go. It's still loose, even if I hadn't been raising, but it wouldn't be awful. I'll be happy to raise this even through the short stacks. $125 is my standard, as you've seen. My raises start at it. Well, in the 1530, they're actually 2.5x. Only in the 1020 do I do 3x. So they pretty much start out. We'll let this go. They pretty much start out at 2.5x in these structure, but I do start at 3x in a lot of tournaments. This is a raisable hand. It's not particularly a great raise. It's probably a break-even raise, but I would often make this one, probably more than half the time. In the 5100, I would suggest generally making it. I think we have another game here. This is a really unusual spot. I would almost always recommend folding here. I think we can call, and I think that I'm hoping at least that didn't happen. That was the play I was worried about. That's why you would generally fold to this. You never want to see that. Odds-wise, it's even hard to. And we're getting 4-1. I absolutely don't think I have the best chance, but I think I can win this hand one time in 5. This is a situation you'll normally never, ever, ever see me do this. I put myself in a bad spot is what I did. I misplayed. I should have just folded there. It turned out actually that I got my hand against hands that were really good to be in against. The only person who really was far ahead of me had very few chips at all, and was not really to be worried about. The player who I thought had the strong hand actually didn't have much of anything. I feel that I misplayed this hand. I really thought this player would just flat call if anything, and I was wrong. And I put myself in a really bad spot where I was essentially committed. And that's something you should generally avoid. I don't think I played the hand terribly, but I think that I did misplay it, and I think it would have been a wiser choice to not become as involved as I did there. Here we're going to just let this go. I feel that this board was worth firing on twice. I think that a lot of players float us there on the flop without much of a hand, so I think it was worth betting twice into. Any response, a call or a raise there, pretty much results in us letting the hand go. You'll notice I left myself with pretty much 6.5, 7 blinds, the minimum shoving stack that I like to leave myself with going into the 5100. It also allows us to still raise full in the 2550. So I put myself, although not in a great spot, I give myself the potential to come back in this game with the stack size I left there. And that's why I was making the bets, the size that I made them, to leave me with sufficient chips should I lost the hand. Anytime you can accomplish a goal with fewer chips, you should always seek to do so. If you can get the same thing done with 300 than 400, then go with 300. But at the same time, you don't want to be giving your opponent's odds to draw. You want to force your opponent into mistakes. So you kind of play a dangerous game with the bet size where you try to spend the minimum to get what you want done and still give your opponent incorrect odds to call. Just to go back over what happened with the sixes hand, I had a player limp in early position. I chose to isolate to 4x with the sixes. That's pretty standard. I would say sixes, ace 10, king queen, all king jack suit, things like that, all good hands in the early levels to isolate with. Obviously, you'll be isolating much wider than that later. After I was called, I had a pretty inconspicuous board, pair and a low card. I had an overpair, so I made a c-bet of about 60% with the sixes. I did get called. I felt that my opponent would call there with the hands like ace high, maybe even two overs. Also medium pairs. On the turn, I chose to fire again. With the intention of checking behind should my opponent call, or folding if he shoved, and I left myself as many chips as I needed to still be able to maneuver if I did lose the hand. It's not a great spot to be in. Against some players you can know on the first call that you're beat, but against an unknown I think it is worth betting twice there, however the unfortunate result was. Here with the ace 10, you can limp or raise. I prefer raising, but the way our stack size lines up, if we raise here, a c-bet commits us, and I think we're likely to be called by both players. So I think for maneuverability, it's better to go ahead and just limp behind here. Generally, though, I definitely would have made an ISO raise if we had a normal stack size. Here we're gonna go ahead and raise it up. No reason to get cute. We do have a strong hand, but there are a lot of draws that could beat us. Here we ISO to 4x, and we got a shove from an extreme short stack, so we are committed to call. And this is a good result for us, especially having these dead chips in the pot. We do get a call here. The turn card is about the worst in the world. The flush got there and the straight got there, and he leads out. I think you can make a pot size shove here, or you can just call it, but any diamond kills your hand. Looks like we were already dead. Any diamond kills your hand in this spot, and there are a lot of straight cards that completely devalue it too. This is about the toughest card they could roll off to play. The pot was already bigger than our stack size, and that led a lot into the decision to go ahead and commit myself. When a player leads out like that for 30, a lot of times, either they already have hit their hand, like it was in this case, or he's trying to keep the pot small because he's afraid of the draws that may have hit as well. Either are really potentially just as likely. We happen to have already run into the hand there. However, in the situation, we had top two pair. We could have improved to a boat, and so many river cards devalue our hand that I think that it's worthwhile to commit, especially with the diminished stack size that we had. So I did go ahead and shove it there, and we didn't get the result or the redraw that we wanted, but I'm pretty happy with the decisions made regardless. I don't know if we'll have another one load up in time here or not. We'll see. It's getting the unfortunate thing about not having poker stars is when it gets late at night like this, it's hard to really get games to load. People go to bed, unfortunately. Here with the 8-3, any two cards, we'd be committed to put our chips in here. It's just an odds thing, not particularly excited about it. With this limp, you can let this go if you want. You don't have to. You can still limp here. The first time in all of history that 8-3 started out as the best hand. Did not hold though. Would have been happy to limp with almost anything here, and if it had been folded, would have gotten involved with absolutely anything. Here we have less chips in the pot than is generally the case because of the small blind being absent, and so it's even worse a shove than it would normally be, and this is still not a good shove. Same thing with the Jack 8 here. It's super borderline. Against tight players, you could do it. I think in general, though, it's break even or slightly losing. I'd say for 9 blinds, you could shove Jack 8 offsuit on the button all day. For 10 blinds against relatively tight opponents, we're a little over 10 here. Alright, we'll be looking to shove especially light now with just under 8 blinds. Any reasonable hand here. And we really want to look for these players that are sitting out and treat them as if they're absent. Just fold the 3-6 of hearts here. Never should be flat calling raises with this narrow a stack size. Just shove the ace king at 8 blinds. Shove or fold any hand at that stack size. Should be no limps at all. Or small raises. Yeah, we'll go ahead and end the session here. Been profitable overall. Wish I could have gotten a few more games, but we still had a good number. Against a player with this few of chips, with top pair, I mean, you just have to commit. There's nothing else you can do. You can call instead of shove if you want, but I think this hand is easily outdrawn. Any queen, king, or ace devalues it. It's best to go ahead and shove there with really not having much of a kicker. We could have shoved king 5 here had it been folded to us, but we'll just fold now. We're getting really short in this game. Would have been happy to get involved a number of times, but haven't really had an opportunity. Easy shove with the 5 should it be folded to us. $11 blinds deep. Don't really want to be making a small raise here. If they shove, we have to call anyway. And if they just flat it, it's hard to play post flop, and any c-bet essentially commits us. Get out of the way of that. Had it been folded to us, this would be a really hard spot to play. Against some opponents, this hand can be shoved from here. Against some opponents, it can be raised from here. And against some opponents, you have to fold it because of the likelihood they'll flat and defend. Would have been a tough spot to play had it been folded to us. My most likely course of action would have been to raise to about 450. But I would sometimes fold it. Shoving here would be my rarest play, but I would sometimes do that as well. So we have a medium stack here, almost to the bubble. This game we're almost out of chips. We really be looking to shove almost any 2 on the next hand. This definitely qualifies. I don't know that I would have folded any cards at all here in this position with the medium stack and the big blind. I really think I would have shoved no matter what. Just so you know, kind of at the range we're looking at in this spot. Easy shove over a limp here, no reason to get cute. Keep in mind that this player is willing to limp and fold to us. He'll also limp with his strong hands to trap us, but he'll lose plenty of equity in the process with the weaker ones. And then even when he calls us, sometimes he'll be behind us. The more times you make that play, the more willing a player is to limp and call you with something marginal like a king 5. Can't fold this for our stack size. And this is a standard shove too. Nothing wrong with what he did at all. Looks like we'll continue on here. This king 5 shove is a standard shove. Really, if they both had 10 blinds, I would still make this move. I think this is pretty standard. Sit and go wizard will even have you shoving king deuce suited here most of the time. And this call against my range is perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with what he did there. Looks like things will go our way this time. Just let this king 4 go. We've moved into the chip lead here, and we will abuse it as usual. Just shove the king jack suited. Should be nothing but shoves or fold against players with these stack sizes. They'll be looking to take a massive lead going into three-handed play if possible here. Shove here as well. Ace deuce would be a shove here, just to give you an idea. We get insta called by both players. I like both plays. I don't see anything wrong with what either player did. This is probably the line. It's not that you're not way ahead of my range when you call with this. It's just that when players are equal to you in chips, you want to take fewer risks. But this is still strong enough. Probably ace 8 suited, ace 9 offsuit, like king queen, king jack suited, pair of sixes, something like that. Not much looser than that when you're equal to other players. And then the overcall with queens was perfectly fine. 4 is easy shove here, ace jack, easy call, perfectly standard. Looks like this one did not work out. However, this one did. So it looks like we'll have another cash up here. For 7 blinds here, we would probably shove this jack 4 had it been folded to us. We'll go ahead and make this one the whole screen. Alright, we were 20 blinds deep effectively. It'll never get narrower than that. I suggest against an unknown, which is the case here, to play a raise fold strategy. Very few open shoves this deep. Against a pro, you might open shove, but that's not the case. We'll start off with small raises to kind of see what we're dealing with. This certainly qualifies as a raise. Standard for me in this level is 550. Do get a call. I will c-bet this board. I want to bet a little on the bigger side, more than I normally would, hoping to just take it down here. We'll check behind this time. We'll hope for a heart to come off. We do get a heart. There's still other hearts that beat us, though. We're hoping our opponent makes a medium-sized bet and we can just flat call this. We got a bigger bet than we were really looking at. A queen or a jack beats us. We have the third best flush here. I hate calling, but I think you have to in heads up. I think it would be too loose to fold. It looks like our opponent actually flopped it. And so we actually came out fairly well, I guess. But in that spot, I would suggest against most opponents calling with the 10 high flush, especially in heads up. I think it'd be too tight to fold. Would have much rather seen a bet like 1200 instead of a pot size one like we did. Probably would have just let it go if he shoved. I don't know. To me, a shove actually looks more suspicious. You can shove the 7-4. You don't have to. We're getting narrow enough that we'll be called by almost anything reasonable, and that would have certainly qualified. We won't be folding this no matter what. I'm going to stop and go it. Would have called a shove. When players do these kind of silly raises, I just flat it and shove the flop. Every once in a while they'll fold. Most generally they both realize you're both committed, but sometimes they do fold, and so it gives you like maybe 5% fold equity that you wouldn't have had. And so that's why I do it. It's just very slightly better, but the result is essentially the same. Had he gone all in, I would have called obviously, and we would have ended up in the same place. Easy shove here. You can actually shove this for, I think, all the way up to 20 blinds according to the Nash chart. It's a very strong hand to shove in heads up. Plays well against calling ranges. The 200, 400, we'll be looking to just shove or fold everything. Won't be making any more small raises. Against a player who we know, who shoves really wide, we could call here. We haven't seen much of that from this player, though, so I suggest looking for a better opportunity. Let the 5-10 go. Could shove 10-7 offsuit there, or even 10 deuce suited. We get a big raise instead of a shove this time. We did see that once before with the kid Queen Jack. So we need to keep in mind what we see and how often we see these different types of raises. Here would have shoved almost anything. Jack high is good enough. Don't like it, but you can't just be folding. We folded a couple hands already, so we really need to be getting aggressive. Would have called it if he shoved there, and would have stop and go'd him if he made a raise. King 9, easy shove here. Good call with the ace 8. Alright, so it looks like we got second in this game. Cashed in, I think, all but one or two. Had a pretty good session overall. I did get involved in one hand with the King Jack that we talked about, that I felt like I could have played that one better. That's an important spot to discuss. Situations where you find yourself progressively becoming more committed to a hand, in which you really should have gotten away from earlier. Make sure you make your commitment decisions a lot of times pre-flop and sit and goes, to be honest. I certainly put too many chips on in pre-flop. I had a hand that played really well. The action had been closed out except for one player. I thought that player was unlikely to shove, and I was exactly wrong. And then we committed ourselves to call. Luckily, things worked out ultimately, but it was not the best spot to put myself in. And so I hope that you all gained something from that hand, and hopefully from the session overall. So anyway, this is Against Time with Grinder School. I hope you enjoyed that, and take care.